distinct pleasure and honor of introducing our speaker today. Paris Glendenning is president of Smart Growth America's Leadership Institute. In this role, he's been keynote speaker at international conferences in Turkey, China, and Australia, traveling around the country and the world, advising state and local governments on smart growth, transit, and sustainability policies and practices. Governor Glendenning served as governor of the state of Maryland from 1995 to 2003. While in office, he created the nation's first state-level smart growth policy package. Prior to being elected governor, he served 3 terms as the elected county executive of Prince George's County, Maryland, a county of 850,000 residents adjacent to Washington, D.C. He was elected by his peers to serve as the president of the Maryland Association of Counties on 2 separate occasions, the chair of the National Association of County Executives on 2 separate occasions. He's been the president of the Council of State Governments and the chairman of the National Governors Association. Professor Glendenning taught political science at the University of Maryland College Park for 27 years. He's the author of 2 books, Controversies of State and Local Political Systems and Pragmatic Federalism, the latter used in more than 400 universities. He's also written over 100 articles and conference papers. Among his many awards and recognitions, Governor Glendenning most recently was named as honorary member of the American Institute of Architects. He's received both the American Society of Landscape Architects Olmsted Award and Harvard University's Innovations in American Government Award. He's twice named Public Official of the Year by Government Magazine, the first time as county executive and the second as governor. He's the only person to be recognized by Government Magazine for leadership at multiple levels of government. Governor Glendenning served on a number of nonprofit boards and acts as senior advisor for energy and the environment for National Strategies Inc. He's also served as president of the Governors Institute for Community Design, National Endowment for the Arts Leadership Initiative, administered in partnership with the EPA and Smart Growth America. Born in New York and raised in Florida, Governor Glendenning holds a doctorate degree in government and politics from Florida State University, as well as 8 honorary degrees. Now, with no further ado, the Technology Council, by our presenter, Honorable Paris Glendenning.
Neil, thank you very much. I understand if I can raise this a little bit, then I should disappear. Theory from West Neil, thank you. I appreciate the kind comments in the introduction. Although I get worried sometimes, it sounds like it's a rehearsal for a visual. Start going through all the details, where it was raised and all that sort of stuff. But I will tell you, I'm very pleased to be here this evening. First met Neil when I was not far from here talking about the implementation of 375 and how it was going to work back in February, I think it was. We talked about the possibility of coming here, so I want to thank you for pulling that together, and certainly thank the council for its support and for everything that you do as well. I'll try to keep my comments brief, although a few of you who have heard me speak before know that somehow I would say that the brief and Glendenning speaking is just not a natural fit. Oxymoron statement, giant shrimp and stuff like that. That notwithstanding, what I'm going to try to do is to give plenty of time for discussion after this. When I spoke in February, my remarks were focused on California's effort to address land use and transportation issues, and in particular, as related to climate change. This evening, I intend to take the conversation a little bit further into factors that are driving what America will look like and causing so many changes, in many cases changes that we're not even explicitly aware of, but will have a huge impact, not just for future generations, but in years to come and a very short time as well. It's interesting, in the past several months and certainly the past several weeks, you couldn't open a newspaper or television or any other media outlet without hearing about the negotiations over the debt limit that are going on in Congress. And notwithstanding that unhappiness, the American people will still facing a great uncertainty and skepticism about the future of the economy. Even in this age, however, of economic uncertainty, without really clear short-term or long-term solutions, very real factors are indeed shaping what our future economy will look like. These are things that when we stop and think about them, they're there, but they're not apparent to us on a regular basis. Things such as shifting demographics, the increase in the gas prices, the need to lower household costs, and of course the demand for jobs and for profitability. They're all changing the way we think about the things that so many people in this room are most interested in, such as the sustainability, the built environment, and economic development. And this is not just the case in the United States. Cities and communities around the world are looking to smart growth and different approaches for sustainability in order to build and prosper and to be sustainable. As was mentioned in the introduction, I've in the last just a little over a year spoken to groups in Australia, Canada, and China, and Turkey. And while the political format is different, basic issues are very much the same. How are they going to prosper, given the changes in their own demographics and given the changes in the cost of energy and the impact of weather modification and so on. Let me just discuss quickly, before I get into some more detail on those forces that are driving this, two critical aspects of sustainability. The first is about simply utilizing our systems of technology to produce fewer emissions, become more efficient, and to simply use less. Now, many of us, in fact, some of this room are directly involved in this, are doing these things because they're practical and relatively easy to do, such as installing LED lights or beginning and enhancing recycling programs or mandating fuel-efficient fleets and so forth. However, what we have to recognize is that sustainability is not just about changing light bulbs or driving hybrids. We have to look much more deeply at the way that we organize the places in which we live and work. Sustainability is about the how, we understand that, but it's also about the where. We need to rethink the physical form of our development, taking into account the energy and other resources, the cost of transportation across sprawling regions, the endless utility expansions that this requires, the rate of land conversion that far outpaces population growth. Let me just give you one example here in terms of one more example of what is happening. This is in so many parts of the country. But what you see here is Cuyahoga County, Iowa, Iowa, which we all know and love and call Cleveland. And if you look at the first map, you see in 1948, it was about 26% developed. The rest was open space, farmland, agricultural land, forestry, and so on. In 2002, 90% of the county has been developed. But look carefully at those population numbers. That is a growth of a very minor 0.3%, and yet the entire area has been consumed. My good friend Ed Rendell, the former governor of Pennsylvania, was telling me one time that during the decade of the 90s, Pennsylvania was 49th in the country in terms of population growth. It was 6th in the country in terms of new urbanization development of land. Now, when you look at this and you look at patterns elsewhere, including patterns here in California, you see what we're talking about in terms of focusing a little bit on not just how we develop, but where we do. In other words, the areas covered by, in this particular map, areas covered now require water and sewer, and so on, nearly quadrupled. The population supporting the fees and taxes remains essentially the same as it was in 1950. The U.S. Green Building Council's LEED rating system, and most of you are familiar with that, this gives a great example about how these two facets of sustainability come together. The LEED program, the Leadership in Energy and Environmental Design, we've seen this shift from the margins to the mainstream of the conversation. The green building slide, which was out of order, was the one we were supposed to show, but this is, of course, a more exotic measure, but you know what it's going on in terms of green buildings across the country. The first LEED systems really defined what it was meant to be building green or sustainable. They established cutting-edge performance standards for building technology and for materials, and created incentives for developers to pursue sustainability. The results, in many ways, have been tremendous. The standards educated builders and the public about how buildings themselves contribute to energy consumption, carbon emissions, and are simply not sustainable unless we start to address these basic issues. Local, state, and even the federal government have gone on now to require different levels of LEED standards, and in some cases even full certification. In King County, for example, Washington, where Seattle is, in Montgomery County, in my home state of Maryland, just two examples of large urban counties, they now require all building permits to meet the minimum LEED standards, except for the most minor renovations. The GSA has started requiring LEED standards for all new, not only constructed buildings, but for leases. And in fact, in the Washington metropolitan area, there's not been a Class A office building constructed starting in the last 5 years that is not a minimum of LEED silver. In part, thanks to these standards, the demand for sustainable building materials is driving innovations that can do even more and that can cost less. For several years, though, LEED ratings did not account for the energy used to get to a certified building or for other environmental costs of specific development patterns and forms. If the building itself was energy efficient, used reclaimed materials, produced no stormwater runoff, and all the other things you want to focus on, but it was built in a greenfield, far from transit, housing, or other uses, it could still rate just as high or even higher than a comparable building sited near transportation resources and other infrastructure. I remember clearly when I was governor, and this was one of the issues we started looking at, and our Department of Economic Development had this ranking system, and it was about how many jobs were produced and how the wages were and what the investment was and so on. And in no case whatsoever was there a question of access to transit or a mix of housing or energy sustainability. And in fact, up until that time, government policy was subsidizing, including through tax credits and the normal economic development grants that the state gives, all of the things that are going in the exact opposite direction of sustainability. It was an interesting reaction when we just started adding